Welcome to Haunted Owl, where nightmares take flight. Title: The Closing Shift. Working the closing shift at Target was never particularly thrilling, but one fateful night I experienced something that still sends shivers down my spine. It was a cold, rainy evening, and the store was unusually quiet. Most customers had already gone home, leaving me and a handful of co-workers to finish our tasks. I was assigned to the toy section, which was nestled in the back corner of the store, far from the entrance. As I methodically restocked shelves and tidied up, I couldn't shake the eerie feeling of being watched. The sensation of being observed from the shadows grew stronger with each passing moment. My unease intensified when I noticed that the lights in the toy section flickered intermittently, casting eerie, elongated shadows. I tried to dismiss it as a mere trick of the imagination, but then I heard it, a soft, childlike giggle. My heart skipped a beat. I was alone in the toy section, and I knew for a fact there were no children left in the store. The sound was too close, too distinct. I scanned the rows of toys, my breath catching in my throat. That's when I saw her. A little girl no older than 7 with matted hair and tattered clothing. She stood at the end of an aisle, her eyes fixed on me, and she giggled again. "Hey there," I called out, my voice trembling. "Are you lost? Do you need help finding your parents?" The girl remained silent, her gaze unwavering. I took a step toward her, my heart pounding in my chest. That's when she started moving, gliding toward the back of the store, never taking her eyes off me. I followed her, my footsteps echoing in the empty store. The lights continued to flicker, casting eerie, dancing shadows that seemed to come to life. The girl led me deeper into the store, her giggles growing louder and more unsettling. We reached the clothing section, where mannequins stood like silent sentinels in the dim light. The girl stopped and pointed at one of them, a mannequin dressed in a child-sized raincoat. The mannequin's plastic face bore an eerie smile. Confusion and fear washed over me as I tried to comprehend the girl's intentions. That's when she spoke for the first time, her voice a haunting whisper. "She's hiding," the girl said, her eyes wide and vacant. "She doesn't want to be seen." I couldn't tear my eyes away from the mannequin. It seemed almost lifelike, as if it held a secret. My heart raced as I took a hesitant step closer, my hand trembling as I reached out to touch it. Before I could make contact, the lights in the store went out completely, plunging me into total darkness. The girl's giggles turned into a bone-chilling laughter that echoed through the aisles. Panic gripped me as I fumbled for my phone's flashlight. But when the light pierced the darkness, the girl and the mannequin were gone. I stumbled back, my pulse racing, and sprinted to the store's entrance, my footsteps echoing loudly. I burst through the doors into the safety of the parking lot, gasping for breath. I never saw the girl or the mannequin again, but the memory of that night still haunts me. What was the meaning behind her cryptic words, and what secrets did that mannequin hold? I may never know, but one thing is certain. I'll never look at a closing shift at Target the same way again. Title: The Haunting Shift at Target, the Enigmatic Checkout Clerk. Working the night shift at Target was usually mundane, but my life changed forever the night I encountered a coworker named Lydia. She was the enigmatic checkout clerk with a peculiar aura that made her unlike anyone I'd ever met. Lydia had an air of mystery about her. She was petite with long, jet-black hair that cascaded over her shoulders like a waterfall of shadows. Her eyes, though bright green, held a depth that seemed to see far beyond the mundane aisles of the store. She dressed in vintage attire, which only added to her mystique. But it wasn't just her appearance that was strange. It was her behavior. Our paths first crossed during my training shift. As I was restocking shelves in the electronics section, I spotted Lydia at the checkout counter. She was scanning items with a meticulousness that bordered on obsession. I approached, attempting a friendly introduction. "Hey, I'm the new guy," I said with a smile. "I'm Luke." Lydia didn't look up from her task. Instead, she mumbled something unintelligible, her voice barely audible. I leaned in closer, straining to hear. She was reciting what sounded like a chant or incantation, her lips moving rapidly as if invoking some unseen presence. Shivers ran down my spine as I realized she was muttering the same phrase over and over. "Protect us from the watchers in the shadows." I glanced around, half expecting to see something lurking in the corners of the store, but there was nothing out of the ordinary. Lydia continued her strange ritual, seemingly oblivious to my presence. Over the weeks, I couldn't ignore Lydia's bizarre quirks. She had an obsession with the number 9, always scanning items in groups of 9 and muttering about the balance it brought. When asked about her hobbies, she would cryptically mention the forgotten arts. One night, as we were closing up the store, Lydia whispered to me, "Have you ever felt the presence of the shadows, Luke?" I hesitated, unsure of how to respond. "What do you mean?" "The Watchers," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They're always here, lingering in the corners of the store, unseen but never truly gone." I laughed nervously, trying to brush off her eerie words, but there was something about her intensity that made it impossible to dismiss. Things took a chilling turn one night when I was assigned to work the closing shift with Lydia. As we were tidying up the checkout area, the store's overhead lights began to flicker erratically. The strange hum of the fluorescent bulbs filled the air. Lydia's eyes widened, and she whispered urgently, "They're here, Luke. The Watchers are here." I scanned the dimly lit store, feeling a growing unease. Shadows danced along the walls, their movements unnatural and unsettling. It was as if the very darkness itself had come to life. Suddenly, a spine-tingling sound echoed through the store, a soft, melodic humming. It seemed to emanate from all directions, surrounding us. My heart raced as I turned to Lydia, who was now trembling. She pointed towards Aisle 9, her voice trembling with fear. "They're in Aisle 9, Luke. We must go there." Reluctantly, I followed her. As we entered the aisle, the humming grew louder, filling the air with an eerie melody. My eyes widened in horror as I saw them. The shadows, the Watchers, twisting and writhing like sentient entities. Lydia raised her hands, her voice now steady and commanding. "Be gone. Return to the darkness from whence you came." Inexplicably, the shadows began to retreat, inching back towards the corners of the aisle. The humming faded, replaced by a heavy silence. I couldn't believe my eyes. Lydia had somehow banished the shadows with her strange incantation. She turned to me, her gaze filled with a mixture of relief and exhaustion. "They're gone, for now," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I was left in stunned silence, unable to comprehend the supernatural events that had just unfolded before me. In the days that followed, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had glimpsed a world beyond the ordinary, a world where shadows had substance and strange incantations held power. Lydia remained an enigma, but I knew one thing for sure. There was more to the night shift at Target than met the eye. And I had a coworker who was a guardian against the darkness lurking in the aisles.